I practice in our municipal department of Goodmans. It's a bit off the beaten track for most lawyers, and to be honest, when I went to Goodmans, I really didn't know what it meant to be a municipal lawyer. We practice with all sorts of weird and arcane things that come through municipal councils, but the bulk of our practice deals with land use and development. And when I did my first rotation as an articling student, I did a 2-week hearing out in Milton with one of our senior partners, Julia Ryan, and just fell in love with the area. I'd always wanted to be an advocate. I always thought I would be a litigator, and found it a very hard choice not to do that, but just fell in love with the mix of politics and social science and law, and have stayed in love with it ever since. I love that every file is different. They involve complex issues. It's a matrix of issues, and you're dealing with true public policy questions that bring in all sorts of stakeholders. And everyone's different. There's always a surprise. And at the end of the day, you are learning something on every single file. You get engaged on every single file, and it's always a new path of discovery. And then at the end of the day, we're also dealing with things that hopefully for our clients get built, which means it's a tangible area of law. And there's no better way to evaluate what you've done than actually to see something get built at the end of the day. And you can go back a couple of years later and actually figure out whether you were wrong or right. I'd like to think most of the time I've been right, but certainly you get to evaluate what you've done, and that's unique in the area of law, actually being able to see it and touch it and sense it. Goodmans is great at encouraging us to do pro bono files, and in the municipal group we have a unique ability to help some of those public bodies and charitable bodies that may need help getting through the municipal process but certainly can't afford a lawyer to help them. And I've been lucky to help some affordable housing providers in the City of Toronto, like St. Clair's Multi-Faith Housing Society. And most recently, I think one of the most rewarding things has been Emily's House, which is one of Toronto's first children's hospices over on Gerrard, on the site of the Bridgepoint Hospital. And it's a heritage house that they've renovated and added to. And it's a place, frankly, where terminally ill kids can go to die, and go to die in a place of peace and comfort. That was one of the most complicated files to get through the approval process. And now to see it built and go tour that facility, you realize that something really magical has been inserted into the City of Toronto. And it was such an honor to be a part of that. My career challenges, I have to say, have not been any different, I think, than the average lawyer. My parents were both scientists at university, so in some respects going into the practice of law was different for me. My parents always joke that I'm a bit of the black sheep, having gone into law. But having said that, I think the greatest obstacle is no different than most lawyers. It's finding that balance between how you work and how you live your life. And the greatest challenge for me, frankly, is I love the area of law, and so my tendency is to bring it home and talk about it and think about it. And my greatest challenge is probably ensuring that when I bring it home, I shut it off and recognize that the rest of my life is equally as important. I think any success that I've had in the area of municipal law is probably attributable to 3 different factors. One, I do think that at the end of the day, I always wanted to be an advocate, and it's an area where you've got to have those advocacy skills, and I think I have them. And secondly, it's an area where you've got to have a degree of passion and fall in love with an area so that when you are advocating for a client, you're really advocating as well and effectively as you can. And thirdly, and it relates to that, it's the municipal geek part of me, that I love the City of Toronto, I love the province of Ontario, and so working on these files where you're dealing with parts of the city and parts of the province that are changing, and you're dealing with competing interests about how those areas should change, it's hard not to be passionate about it, at least for someone like me. And so when you bring that interest and that passion with some advocacy skills to it, and hopefully a little bit of sense as to what the law is, it means you're bringing all of that to bear on every single file. And I think that's where some of the successes come from, is probably just that passion for these issues that are so interesting, at least to me.